Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to another episode of the Jim Stroud Show, where I bring to your attention extraordinary people such as the guest I have on this episode. And before I go into that, let me give her just a small introduction as to who you will be listening to today. I attended an Atlanta SHRM event. I think it was 2 months ago now, I think it was. Not long ago, and saw a lot of presentations that were quite remarkable. One I thought sort of stood out as among the best, and that was given by Dr. Tracey Wilen-Daugenti. She talked about the future of work, and my mind was like blown, and my mouth was like hitting the floor, and I was like, whoa, you are bringing some really interesting information to me in a very personable, professional way, and I said, I must have you on my show. Please, please, please let me interview you. And she condescended to say yes. Your lovely host. So she is with us today. So hello, Dr. Tracey. How are you?
Very good, Jim, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. I've raved about your presentation to so many people beyond this podcast. And I've said a lot of good things. But for those who did not have the benefit of me bragging about you, could you sort of give a little synopsis of what your presentation was about at SHRM?
Oh, sure. So we had conducted a number of think tanks over the past 2 years with thought leaders, corporate executives, educators, policymakers on the whole concept on the future of work and also what skills would be required for the future. And so what I presented at SHRM was really the combination of the results of those two studies simplified in a way that people could understand what the future is about.
Wow. I had to confess to being, fascinated, slightly uneasy, because I noticed how so much is going towards automation and using robots, and how several jobs are going to be phased out in favor of newer technologies. And it really, I was just amazed by it. And I don't say that lightly because I see a lot of things, but it really surprised me how much the robots are taking over.
Well, it's actually a lot of technologies are taking over, but your point is well taken. I think the first thing that people need to realize, which I stressed at the beginning of the presentation, is that people are living longer. And that's important because that means your work life has increased substantially. So, for example, if you see those prudential billboards that they have out, if a baby born today will live 120 years. And you and I, are targeted to live to 100, which means we may be working for 50 to 70 years. And a lot of us hadn't thought about that. And at the same time, technology is rapidly accelerating. I mean, think about it. The iPhone was launched in 2007, and now there's a proliferation of apps that are really, just replacing so many of the rote activities that people have done in the past. So it's not just robots, but it's really technology is moving into this space and really absorbing some of the more routine tasks that in the past people have relied on other people to do.
Yeah. I was reading an article too just yesterday, or I think it was an infographic actually, that was talking about technology and how the job market is changing and so forth. And one thing that it brought out in this article that was also interesting to me to think about your presentation was how the advent of the driverless car. It mentioned how Google's driverless car is out there, and the speculation was, okay, once this is perfected, and the argument was that it pretty much was perfected because Google car has driven so many thousands of miles without an incident. And the incident it did have was because of human beings' error, not because of the car's error. And as I was reading the article, they were speculating how this could do away with the taxi industry as we know it. I'll put that precursor as we know it. It can also do away with the trucking industry as we know it, because all you do is put something on the truck and then hit go. Wow.
Yep, and actually, because I live in Silicon Valley, we see every day the Google autonomous car. They test it up and down our freeways, but your point is very well taken because I happened to be in San Francisco right after this Future of Work webinar that we gave, positioning the results, and a taxi driver said to me that he personally feared his job. He thought that he would always have a safe job being a taxi driver, and that Google had applied for permits in San Francisco and Las Vegas, by the way, for their autonomous car. And while that's scary at one side, yes, that could replace drivers, Google is pretty quick to mention some of the benefits, which really struck me, which is, how many people do you know have been injured because someone has been eating on the road, using cell phones while driving, drinking while driving, and, how many people can't use a car because of handicaps? And this autonomous car could have these other benefits of offering opportunities of preserving your life or giving people who couldn't have a car the opportunity to drive. On the truck driver point, truck drivers are in high demand and there are shortages. I was talking to a major community college in the South that was saying that it's their most popular course because people are looking for truck drivers, and a lot of people just don't want to drive those trucks because it's tiring, it's long hauls that you're away from home, and it could be quite interesting if all of the trucks could be robotic. And it's not too far-fetched because you think about when you're flying, a lot of these planes are on autopilot. In fact, I was just in an airport, and interesting enough, had one of those train transits, and there was not a train driver, and it was a long ride to get from terminal to baggage, but it was all automated, really robotically, and so that also eliminates, whoever used to drive that train back and forth. So there's a lot of scary stuff, yes, but there's also a lot of future benefits at the same time.
Yeah, I had some conversation with some colleagues after your presentation because it really had an impact on several people there, as you know. And we were talking about the impact on people, how some people will feel very threatened by all the new technology and beginning to fear the right word, I don't want to say obsolete, but really being concerned about their value to society if they place a high level of importance on what they do for a living. And if what they do for a living is being replaced by technology, then where does that place them in society? And the argument was going back and forth of, well, there'll be a lot of lawyers employed to argue that you didn't hire me because of some machines, so it'll be machine discrimination. And then another argument was, well, that will just simply force people to learn new skills, to adapt, which is what people have always done. But what do you think is the more likely? Is it both or either or?
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a very good point, which is why I wanted to look at skills for the future, because I think it is important for people to understand. If the way I look at the world is probably going to people are going to fall into three buckets. You're going to have the people who create the technology because they have the computer science background, they're engineers, or they're just adept at creating technology. And I think that these people will gain the most be able to make the most money. And then you're going to have a group of people who just avoid technology and will not adopt it. I mean, I just talked to a person who said, I don't believe in technology. And I said, it's not a religion. It's something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. It isn't a choice that, you believe in it or not. So I think that part of the population will suffer the most because they refuse to engage. And so they will be, as Mark Andronicson, venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, says, they'll be working for the machines because they've resisted. I think the largest opportunity for people is this third group in the middle. And these are people who really have that subject matter expertise, but also respect that technology is pervasive. And these are the people who will say, I need to start to compete with technology to provide value creation. So these are the people who would say, I didn't make the app, but I know how to use that app to sell my sweaters, right? So I'm the subject matter expert in making sweaters, but I figured out that I can use these apps to help me sell the sweaters. So it's not resisting technology, but figuring out how can I use that technology to build a viable business. The point about the lawyer is very well taken. The lawyers have subject matter expertise, but there will be certain parts in the legal industry that will continually be automated, and probably for the better, because it will be more accurate. And you don't have to rely if the person is awake or sleepy or, double checking their work. But you'll always have that need for the subject matter expertise, but they need to think about how can they use that along with the technology to really add more value.
Mhm. Yeah. Definitely receive all that you said there. It also brought to mind an argument we had as well about how people were I won't say jumping out of windows, but a lot of companies were nervous when the VCR hit the market. And the VCR is out, it's going to do away with the movie industry. So all these movie theaters, all the millions of dollars spent on movie theaters, it's going to go to waste because no one's going to go out anymore. They're going to just stick with stay at home and watch VCR movies. And, of course, it didn't happen.
That's right. Well, or you had new inventions such as Netflix or Hulu that really, or, iTunes, that took the movie industry in a different direction because people were able to figure out how can I take this industry, embrace the technology in the market, and be able to still monetize and provide value and jobs for people. I mean, let's face it, people were scared when the printing press came out because books were created, and would that replace, people telling people stories? Because, oh my God, you won't need people anymore to tell stories if there's a book, right? So every generation, and decade has new inventions that people fear, but what I see it really doing is creating opportunities. I mean, I read a statistic that for every tech job, 10 additional jobs are created, because they surround the technology and offer value.
Yeah, it would seem to me that with as many skills one could have, whether they go to school for it or not, one consistent skill anyone could have, no matter the industry they're in, is the skill to adapt.
Absolutely, and to continue to learn. And, the good thing is that technology is getting easier and easier. I mean, when you think about when the cell phone first came out, a lot of people resisted. And now I believe there's more cell phones than people. There's over 6 billion, cell phones in the world, and I think there's 7 billion people. So it's on this projection to have more cell phones. And everyone uses it, right? So it gets easier and easier. But it's really, reminding people that you have to figure out not just how to text, but how are you using the technology to provide value? And are you encouraging your kids or your younger siblings to think about, if they get really excited about a technology or a Facebook company or a Google or a game, what kind of preparation do they need to be able to work in these kinds of companies? And a lot of it would require some component of technology or computer skills along with the subject matter expertise. For
sure. Just to switch gears just a little bit, I find all this fascinating. I probably could talk an hour with you just on this topic alone. But I wanted to touch base with you as well about your book. I understand you have a new book that is out in the market. Can you tell me what the title of the book is and what it's about?
Sure, and thank you. Yes, in March, I launched a book along with some colleagues of mine called Women Lead, Career Perspectives from Workplace Leaders. And about a year ago, I saw the trends shifting for women. Women are over 50% or 50% of the workforce. I was watching the Olympics along with everyone else and saw that there were more women from America participating than men. We saw that we have the largest number of women in the Congress. We see that we have women presidents and prime ministers now globally. We have more women, in positions in the military. So women are definitely, and a woman starting a business every second. So women are, to me, was a point where we should relook at women and women's position in society. And so we ran two studies. One was for men and women, just leadership research study. And then a second one is I interviewed over 200 women leaders in all kinds of professions, physicians and lawyers, corporate, entrepreneurs, and business owners to really understand where are women today and are women our future leaders. And so that's, condensed into a book. And I also give speeches on that as well. And actually we're on tour right now working with corporations, creating dialogues with women executives and employees on women in leadership.
If someone wanted to see you live giving one of your presentations, how would they be? Is that open to the public, or do they have to be affiliated with whomever client you're serving at the time?
So, and thank you for that question. So on my website, Tracey Wilen, Tracey with an E, Wilen.com, we post as many of the speeches and executive panels that I moderate that companies will give us permission to do. So, and we really have had an outreach of companies saying, I would like to tape this, distribute it to our employee base, and then also give it back to you to put on your website. We have been to 26 stops on this tour, and it keeps growing because, companies are seeing that the dialogue really needs to happen and is happening between executives and women, and that women really are in the forefront of many of these leadership positions. And so it's just incredibly exciting that we can do this, and I hope that it will continue.
Do you ever get any kind of, when you're making these kind of presentations, any kind of, pushback when someone says women in leadership positions are great, but they don't have all the attributes that men have? Or do you ever have any kind of chauvinistic pushback in this day and age? Just sort of curious.
Well, some of the pushback that I get is that, if women are really leading, why are men still in charge? There's this feeling that men run the world, and so we ran, I ran the numbers and looked at, because when I did measure, by the way, leadership attributes and characteristics, in the 10 that we measured, and it's all in the back of the book, women scored women higher on all 10 characteristics and attributes. Clearly, women see that women have the leadership skills and abilities. But then when we looked at Generation X and Y, which is the age 52, 53 and younger, they were gender agnostic. So these two generations don't really see the differences. They don't see the world in a male or female lens anymore. In fact, they probably just look at the world through their own lens. So then you say, well, what percentage of the world working population left might have some different perceptions? And that's would bring you into the conclusion of the boomer men. And what percentage of the population is that? And that's about 18 to 20%. And boomer men, so you can put the age on it, is, someone who's around 53, 54 and older. And if you remember what we talked about when we started this call, people are living longer. And many of the CEOs who are in place today are men in Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies who are in that age bracket, and they didn't retire. And so you could easily see why the perception is that men are running the world, because men are still working in these roles. And in fact, some of the younger generations are saying to us and to their companies, hey, it's our turn. It's, I'm Generation X. I'm in my 40s. It's time for me to move into that leadership role, whether it's male or female. I'm ready. And if I'm not going to get it here, I'm going to start looking for places or other firms that are willing to take my experience and skill set and give me that opportunity. And then you have, of course, the millennials who feel like, gee, I should be a vice president by age 20 or 30, everybody's in my way. So, we see the dynamics which are playing out as there's a lot more job movement in the millennial generation. So those are more of the questions that I get rather than are women ready or not. I think that argument is over. It's more of a generation discussion of saying, hey, the pipeline, I'm supposed to be somewhere now and I'm not. So what am I going to do about it? And the solution is you really do have to take control of your career and maybe make some of those shifts and decisions around what you want to do.
Sound advice. One last question before we go, if I may. I was looking at one particular statistic about women in college. I think it was like more women are enrolling in college or completing college at a higher rate than men are. And it gave me somewhat of an entrepreneurial idea, which I was sort of halfway joking as I was brainstorming it, is that if women are more or represented more in college, and they have the advantages of that, which could translate into more women in senior positions, executive roles, that kind of thing, at a faster rate than men, then at some point when they are ready to get married or have a yearning to start a family and so forth, it could be a good opportunity for someone to be a matchmaker to help these women who are so successful and, for lack of a better word, busy, that they may not have time to actually date. And it makes me think that at one point it was a role that the main customer would be a man who was so busy working and successful that he had time to date and start a family. He needed a matchmaker. So I see that sort of flipping a little bit in the near future where women would be the chief customers of that type of service. Or what do you think? Do you think I'm off mark there, or?
No, I think it's actually a reality for a lot of women, and a great idea, because women not only are pursuing education more than men, but they're also pursuing advanced degrees more than men, and so they're more likely to stay in college. And as you know, unemployment is directly tied to education. So the more educated you are, the least likely to be unemployed, and salary is also tied to education. The more educated you are, the higher salary you can make. So you can definitely see that opportunity, and I hope I see you on Shark Tank proposing that.
Hey, you never know.
No, but in seriousness, I love when I talk to people who come up with the entrepreneurial idea. That concept really didn't exist in my world, which I view as a very classical world. The only people who were business owners was if your parents owned a business and they forced you to take over the family business. But today there's so much energy in the United States around people thinking of entrepreneurial ideas. And a lot of it is due to that it's easier, because of technology. It's easier for people to start businesses. And there's more, funding available, or there's way to crowdsource funding, or the venture capital community is looking at smaller loans, so there's more opportunities. And I really think that's one of the solutions that can help us drive the U.S. economy and also drive some of these issues that we hear around diversity, because anyone can start a business, right? You're not relying on someone deciding if you're the right fit for a company anymore. And so I'm very excited about the energy around entrepreneurism.
Dr. Tracey Wilen-Daugenti, thank you so much for being on the Jim Stroud Show.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.